Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are back. And you probably know what's happened, don't you? You do know what's happened. Tottenham Hotspur are back in our lives, as is Dr. Tottenham. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are listening for the first time, where have you really been? We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too, and we are back to review Tottenham Hotspur being beaten by Ipswich Town. I think, look, many that have followed, watched, covered Spurs in the last 20, 25 years may not be massively surprised by that result because they've become accustomed and used to Tottenham letting you down at such critical times under different managers, under different squads. But one common theme, the ownership, which I know many think we avoid on Last One on Spurs. And I just want to bring that to the very top of this show, that if those missed it on our previous show, we did a good half an hour, 45 minutes on the board where we discussed the comments of Hugo Lloris about our current hierarchy, where he discussed, of course, you want to call it incident, or the fact he was handed a watch with the, of course, engraving of finalists on it. So just want to make that very clear. I also want to say, look, you can maybe argue that's not the reason why Tottenham lost in the fashion they did to Ipswich. It's more than that. It's about the manager. It's about his tactics. It's about the players. It's about the mentality. It's about the character of this Spurs side. So we'll cover all that and more on Last Word on Spurs. I want to say a massive thank you to these wonderful panellists that have given up their spare time to talk all things Tottenham. I'm joined, as you can see, smiling away. I'm not sure they're smiling. Deeply upset inside. I'm joined by my co-pilot, Captain Frustration. Russ Wiliams is back on the show, as is actor TJ Ramini. My pleasure, my friend. Lovely to have you back here. TJ back on the show and making up our panel. Hard-hitting, tells it as it is. Jonny H is in the house. When I said to Jonny, we're going to slowly integrate you in, I think he thinks I've pushed him in to a fire. So, John, please accept my apologies. Want to say at the top of this show, many will know Patrick Tyrant was scheduled to be on this show. I think Pat, on the back of that result, look, wasn't in the right frame of mind. And look, we just said, Pat, go and enjoy some time with the family, go and enjoy some time with your son. There'll be other days to talk all things Tottenham. He deserves much more of your time than this football club right now. My God, we've got an able and capable replacement in Jonny H. God bless him. I'm not sure what he's let himself in for, but when I tell him there's more of these to come, I hope you don't mean these results. I mean podcast, John, all right, before I scare you off completely. Look, we are going to bring in shortly Ange Postecoglou's presser. Therapy's about to start. Russ, I'm going to come with you, if I can, and come over to you to start this show. Where do I start? I mean, look, full-time, Tottenham 1, Ipswich 2. Look, many will describe it, there's bad days at the office and there's really bad days. But Spurs, let's put it into context here. Ipswich have waited 22 years for that moment. I've got to say, they were full value for all 3 points after the first half goals on Szmodics and Delap. I mean, Spurs, in typical Spurs fashion, could have gone third, but lost again after the Europa League match. And that's Ipswich's last competitive win coming back in the Championship during the 23-24 season, 190 days ago. Dr. Tottenham. Russ, it feels more embarrassing than ever. Give me your thoughts on that performance, that result, and where that leaves us right now going into that dreaded another international break.
Well, I mean, thank you, Rick, for having me on once again. Hello to all the viewers and the listeners and my fellow panelists. I mean, I think the harsh reality is that, Spurs are a big club with a small, brittle mentality and have been for many years. Not just the playing side, the ownership, the machinations of the football club itself. And off the back of Galatasaray, which we were talking in that game, I mean, it was a shocking performance. Palace was bad, but Galatasaray, terrible. And so we expected to see them come back today. The first half was pretty abject, really. Ipswich ran the show. And as you said, Rick, this is a football club who've just got back in the Premier League and they haven't won a game, rather like Crystal Palace, but they both end up beating Spurs. And the most infuriating thing, I think, for an awful lot of us is that we could have gone third today. We're sitting at 10th in the Premier League. That is a position, even after, the amount of games we've had, 11, that for Tottenham fans is absolutely unacceptable. And the performance was unacceptable. It was clueless. It was gutless. And we seem to have a squad full of the most inconsistent footballers on planet Earth, but we bought them all. That's how it feels as a Spurs fan. And we've got a manager, and I'm not Ange out, but I'm edging a little bit closer to a lot of the fan base now, and reading our social media feeds and talking to people. There are a lot of people where Ange Postecoglou is wearing thin, and he's got 4 huge games coming up. Man City away, then we're at home to Fulham, then we're away at Bournemouth, who can't stop winning at the moment. Another great win at the weekend. Then we got Rangers in the Europa League, Ibrox, and then I think we got Manchester United shortly after that in the Carabao Cup. Huge run of games, really. I don't think he's in danger right now, but come Christmas time, if I was a manager of Bournemouth or Brentford, I might be keeping my mobile phone pretty close to me, because we could see a change, and I don't like to see anybody lose their job. But this kind of up down performance, and the bad ones seem to be getting worse, poses an awful lot of questions. Are the players playing for Ange Postecoglou? Do they still believe in his methodology and his beliefs in football? Why are so many of our players off form all the time? What's happened to people like James Madison? Richarlison injured again, but even when he's fit, he's no good at all. The money we've wasted. The club have spent money, but they've spent it badly. I've got a list of players here. We'll come on to it later, I'm sure. Nearly £300 million worth of players that simply weren't good enough. And I think the evidence says there's an awful lot in that first 11 and in that squad who are at the top level of Premier League. And make no mistake about it, you can go on about cups, folks, all you want. And we'd all love a bit of silverware, but the action is the Premier League, the Champions League, and the Europa League for prestige. Now, the times have changed. And I just think that we're not capable, finally, of playing domestic football and European football with this manager and this squad of players. That's my honest opinion.
Russ, thank you so much for the opener there. TJ, I'm going to bring you in. It doesn't get any easier. And I'll tell you, mate, I think, TJ, many look to you as a voice of reason, a voice of inspiration, and one that does seem to keep the fan base quite level-headed whenever you come on this show. Ipswich Town's first Premier League win in over 2 decades. Russ bringing in there about the international breaks and, Europe in general. We'll come on to Europe shortly, but Spurs heading to their 3rd international break in a row of a defeat. Too often, they seem to let other teams take the lead at home. On this occasion, they failed to recover. Big boos did ring around the stadium for a few seconds at the full-time whistle. And this is, you've got to say, this is the worst Spurs performance before an international break since the last Spurs performance before an international break. TJ, the lack of consistency, it's just simply unmatched at the moment. It's so frustrating, following this club up and down like many of us do around the globe, around the country, like Jonny will come on to in a second as well. What can, TJ, you take away from that, from a man that normally is so positive, is so forward-thinking about the club? Can you give me anything on the back of such a dire performance of that nature?
I can only try. But in all honesty, Rick, yes, I tend to be a glass half full person, just through life. And I guess that's also reflected in how I look at this team that we commit ourselves to. But what can I take from a performance like that? The only thing that's consistent about Spurs is our inconsistency. And, I can't stand those kind of Yoda-esque cliches, but it's such an easy one to make. Before coming on the show, we're saying, we've been seeing this pattern of Spursy, weak, soft underbelly behavior for 25 years. How else are we supposed to feel? This club makes it so difficult to get behind. Now, listen, I think what I will say is that this season has really illustrated not only how difficult the Premier League is, how competitive the Premier League is, but also how inconsistent so many of the teams have been. And so I am not an Ange out person right now. Believe me, if I truly felt in my heart of hearts that getting rid of another manager and bringing somebody else in would be good for us in the long term, rather than a manager bounce and another short-term fix before they leave again, and then sure, I would subscribe to that. But I don't subscribe to that because I'm looking for a semblance of stability. I'm looking for a semblance of galvanized togetherness. If Ange can bring us that, great. If he can't, then okay, he can go. But just another kind of knee-jerk reaction right now is, I don't think what we need. To illustrate how hard and how competitive the Premier League is and how inconsistent, especially this season, there's a three-point gap between 11th and 3rd. So hopefully that can give people a little bit of solace, right? Between 11th and 3rd, 3 points. So that's how tough it is. That's how competitive it is. That's how inconsistent most of the teams have been this season. And we're even seeing the best team for me in the world, which is Manchester City, have a real blip right now. So I think we've played some really good football this season. We've played some shocking football this season. What I cannot forgive is when we just don't show up. What is it? 75%, 80%, 90% of success is showing up. Show up, boys. Show up. If you're beaten, you're beaten. But you can't capitulate, because that's what drives fans crazy, even positive fans like me. Listen, it's nice to be back on the show. Russ, lovely to see you, brother, as always. Ricky, my pleasure. Jonny, nice to see you, mate. Hello, viewers. Hello, listeners. We're going to do our very best for you this afternoon or this evening back at home. We're going to do our best, but today was tough.
Yeah, bless you, mate. Thank you so much for that. Before I bring Jonny in, we did have over 150 listener and viewer comments come in the show. And before I brought Jonny on, I said to Jonny, don't worry, we'll get you out of here by 9:30. I think you might think in a wheelchair after what the show might bring to him on the back of what this might do to us. But look, at the same time, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be hard. And like I say, we thank you so much for your support. We are going to bring in a lot of those viewers and listener questions we go throughout the show. But John, I do want to come over to you. You were there earlier today. And I think the biggest frustration I can try and sum up is that Tottenham, whenever they seem to have the opportunity or chance to get into the top 4, become the worst football team in quite simply existence. It is unbelievable just quite simply how the amount of times this club have the ability to follow up a good moment or a good period of passage with their worst performance of the season. I mean, it just becomes seriously unmatched. And whenever they look like they turn the corner, they then revert back to type. I mean, look, I will just say credit to Ipswich, because Ipswich were winless in 10 Premier League games coming into this. No wins in 11. No wins in 12 Premier League away games. No win in any Premier League game since April 2022. But they had taken points off Villa, Brighton and Fulham this season. And you made a point, actually, John, off air, that you were saying to a lot of your friends, don't mind me saying, Ipswich do have players in there that Spurs should be considered about. Did we, Jonny, underestimate them? Did we not take the game serious enough? Because this is becoming a pattern for Spurs, isn't it, John? We've seen, with no disrespect, in the bigger games, got no issue showing up, but we know, again, putting this into context, Palace, you have to lump in, of course, Ipswich here as well. Brighton away in the second half. Why are the players, if it's what we're going down this avenue here, not motivated enough for these games, John? Can you put your finger on it for us? Or just tell us about that performance in general?
I mean, look, it was Remembrance Sunday today, and there was a minute of silence for the fallen. I think the players had fallen somewhere along the line. They did not look motivated in the warm-up. It all looked very casual to me. As they played the last post, now on reflection, I'm looking back, was that Ange's last post? It was a shambolic performance. They'd never seemed to be at the races from the off. Before the game, I was waxing lyrical about Ipswich. I'd seen Ipswich play. I think Kieran McKenna is a really top manager. I mean, to put it in perspective, 2 years ago, they were beating Cheltenham Town in League One. And here we are, he's taken them in 2 years to the Premier League. And 22 years later, as you mentioned, they're winning their first Premier League game. And, here's a guy who was at Spurs as a player, got a hip injury, had to retire, and was given a job as the academy coach. I think it took us to the semi-finals of the Youth Cup. and then was given a job at Manchester United as an assistant manager. He's got a lot of talent. And I've read some things about him, tactical nous and all the rest of it. And I was very interested to see how he fared today against Ange, because he had some very clever acquisitions. Russ was mentioning before about our acquisitions, and I totally agree. Some of our acquisitions have been extremely questionable. Amari Hutchinson today, I mean, he was their most expensive acquisition at 25 million. And he was absolutely superb today. He run us ragged. Even in the 90th minute, he was still going. Arsenal and Chelsea, he's come through their ranks. Liam Delap, Rory Delap's son, again, bullied our back four. Leif Davis at left back looked really, really good. And, they looked like, they did not look like the team that has been assembled for peanuts. We look like the team that have been assembled with peanuts. I just feel that we don't have right now, we do not have leadership on and off that pitch. They look at each other. Ange stands there with his hands in his pockets. I'm not asking him to be Mikel Arteta going crazy along the touchline, but I constantly was looking to the touchline. I was sat today in the East Stand and on the halfway line, I'm looking directly at Ange, and I'm looking for him to pull the players over when it's not going. Look, guys, we need to do this, we need to do that. I didn't see any of that. The only person that was interacting was Montgomery. And I just think to myself, what is going on? What is going on? Come on, Ange, you need to lead them. The substitutions, the system. Look, he's assembled. I don't really want to hear this story of people blaming the fact that he hasn't had the players and he hasn't been backed. Russ mentioned it before, 300 million pounds has been spent. He's had his players. He's had 3 windows to get rid of the players he doesn't want and bring in the players that he wants. And unfortunately, those players that he's assembled have been brought in to play one system, one style of football. And when faced with a low block system, a low block counter-attacking system, we keep coming up short. And, I've been there at Palace. Thankfully, I wasn't at Galatasaray, but we keep experiencing the same scenario. And there's nobody with the answers to the question. There isn't anything that we can do. You could almost know to leave the stadium today that we weren't going to find the solution to the problem. The same at Palace. Unfortunately, again, I was at Brighton. When that first goal went in, you expected him to change something, to react. There wasn't anything. There were other subs I thought could have been made today. When you're chasing the game, come on, play the ball long. Play something different. Do something different. We just seem to be inept at doing it, and I just couldn't see where anything was going to change today. I don't actually understand why Ange he has all the talk post-match, pre-match, but during the game he has nothing to say. I want someone to motivate me. If I'm a young kid. I think, as a 21, 22-year-old, sometimes you need an arm around you to motivate you. The experienced ones should be doing it for themselves. But I don't see that. Maybe he's doing that, in training. But I think during a game, once you've given he says he believes that he should give the instructions. And as footballers, they should go out for that 90 minutes and perform those instructions. But we all know when they're 18, 19, 20, they can get a little bit distracted and they need to be put back on track. And I just don't see it. And, honestly, today, I'm really am getting to the stage now where, look, none of us want Ange to, I wouldn't say none of us want him to be sacked, but none of us want to go through another project.
Again.
A project.
Yeah. It's a reassembling cycle, John, isn't it? The same cycle under the same ownership. Doesn't work, change the manager. Yeah. And I tell you, just to let you come back in, John, the problem is now we are running out of managers to bring in because no disrespect, if people remember on this point. And Postecoglou was not Tottenham's first choice at the time of bringing him in. Arne Slot publicly came out and said, I've turned down the job. Yeah, publicly come out and said, I've turned down the job. So I think this notion that the Spurs job is one of the most attractive in the world is not the case. You know, they have scared off a lot of decent, progressive managers that would look at Tottenham as a club in terms of the stadium, the training ground, and think that is a massive, massive club. But the problem is, and, you know, I don't want the show to be all about the board, because, Jonny, you have your hiccups about them. I have my hiccups about them. Russ, you say it, TJ. I know you've made points in the past about certain aspects of them. But at the end of the day, I've always said this for me, that when football, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, by the way, I can just say, when football is not first of your priorities at a club, and that feeds through, that is a big, big problem. And the problem at Tottenham is, unfortunately, football isn't first. NFL, Formula One. And the problem is, when you go past the stadium now, and Jonny, you'll know, you go there every week, bless your heart, every fortnight, you wouldn't even know it's a football stadium, really, apart from the actual stadium itself, because it doesn't advertise as Tottenham Hotspur Football Club anymore. Formula One, NFL, it's your home. But there's lots of this that screams out, look, for me, I've said this before, I've got no issue with regards to the stadium being used for the different events it has, whether it's concerts, whether it's NFL, whether it's boxing, whether it's Lady Gaga, whatever that brings in, as long as I'm seeing that same level of money going in, being put into the first team. And you're right, you know, it's no point keep going back and talking about the other windows, but we all said when that window had shut at the end of August, we all turned around and said, this squad is simply not good enough. Whereas the manager was turning around telling us that from his perspective, he wants to challenge for the league. But us as fans, we're not crazy people. The fans aren't crazy. Please don't kid the fan base. You know, this fan base of, like you, Jonny, you follow the club home and away around the world. Please don't kid us and tell us that we can compete for a title when you look at the squad we've got. It's embarrassing. It really does, in my opinion. What do you think we are? Idiots? You know, a lot of people give up so much time to come on this podcast alone. Please, Russ, save me.
Rick, we don't have elite footballers, really, or hardly any. We don't, on the evidence, have an elite manager. We did have one, Antonio Conte. And if we could have put up with this histrionics, and if he'd have been given what he wanted, it could have been far more successful for him, because he's a winner. But of course, I think he started to think about the things that you've just been talking about, Rick, and he could see what was going to happen and what the mentality of the football club was going to be in terms of where the football sits within the pantheon of the ownership. Yeah. And that's where the problem started. But you're right. And the worrying thing is, if Ange goes, and I think it's really in the lap of the gods now. I mean, few more performances like today, and they'll have no choice. Absolutely no choice whatsoever. He will have to go. Who comes in, Rick? And I think the point you make is, you know, this notion that Spurs is one of those must-have jobs in football. I think there was an element of that back in the day, but now it is a football club, but it does a lot of entertainment and it does a lot of other stuff, and it makes a load of money. And
not just for the managers, boys. You know, not just for the managers, Russ. You know, to your point, to your point,
as fans,
Jonny as well.
Highly frustrating. Highly frustrating.
I think if you look at a player, you know, I mean, how long is a player's career? Really, is it 15 years, or is that too long? Maybe, right? So let's say it's 10 to 15 years. So if you're a player, let's say that you're sort of 22, 23, and, you know, you're making waves either somewhere on the continent or maybe even somewhere in England, and Tottenham comes along. And then maybe not Arsenal, but, you know, or Liverpool, but, you know, maybe Newcastle comes along, or Villa comes along. Are you going to go to Tottenham? And for me, that's the huge problem now. We talk about systemic issues. And again, look, we can't please all of the people all the time. And listen, to the viewers and the listeners and all that kind of love and respect, man. Rick said before the show, we have a certain responsibility, and I promise you we are doing our best. We're going to say some things that are going to infuriate you. We're going to say some things you're going to agree with and disagree with. We are doing our best. We're all Tottenham fans, okay? But to me, if I look at a club that has known nothing but failure for 25 years, I am going to look at the board. I am going to look at the head of the snake. And here's another analogy, you know, a fish rots from the head down and all that kind of thing. Like, nobody with their hand on their heart can say that Levy hasn't built like a really sustainable business, very successful, you know, and improved the infrastructure of the club no end. And I commend him for that, as I would commend anybody who's been successful in their business, man. Well done. This is a competitive world. So well done. But me, like every other Tottenham fan, including the three Tottenham fans that are on this podcast today, trying to spread a little sunshine if we can, but also remaining pragmatic and realistic. If those profits that you make do not benefit the football club, then we're going to be upset about that. And so I can't help but look at the very structure of this club, that something intrinsically needs to change, whether that means we sell a 25% share to, I can't remember the name of that
Amanda
Saudis and,
yeah.
right,
Amanda
you know, whoever it is, but something seismic needs to change. I don't think another manager is a big enough change. I really don't, because we've done it time and time and time again, and nothing seems to happen. I do question the desire of the players. I do question the mentality of the players, especially when, again, we've made the point we just beat City and we just beat Villa. I don't want to hear we beat City's B team. No, we didn't. And also City's C team are better than most people's A teams. We beat them. We beat Villa, right? So we can beat these strong teams. There is something in our mentality which smacks to me of complacency, if not arrogance, that when we play a quote unquote small team, we collapse. That's something that must change. That comes from leadership on the field. That comes from a certain sense of pride when you put that shirt on and you look at that badge and it means something to you. That for me is lacking at this football club and has been for quite some time.
But TJ,
Jonny,
is that not though the responsibility somewhat of the manager to install leadership qualities? You see, I always believe, the captain is the leader. But what happens is sometimes the captain is having an off day, and it's up to the rest of the members of the squad to step forward and lift everybody.
Yeah, I think, and also it's the culture of the club which comes from the manager and the captain to make sure that there are leaders all over the place. You know, every single person should be, you know, racing for that ball when it goes off at the 94th minute and looking to get it back onto the field. That culture has been absent from this football club for so long. Boys, we're talking about decades here. And so we have really deep issues with leadership, with those voices, with that strength, which is so important because, my goodness, the margins are so fine. Again, 3 points between 11th and 3rd. So we need everything we can possibly do just to gut out some victories. We can't just blow teams away with beautiful football because we can't play that consistently. We don't have the players capable of doing that consistently. We just
what is our heritage? What is our heritage, TJ? Our heritage has been
to dare us to do, right? The game is about glory. So again, like what I do like about Ange is, yes, I want attacking football. I don't want Conte football. If it meant us winning things, I'd take it. I'd take it all day long, but that's not who we are as a club. So we need somebody who understands the culture, understands what the fans want to see, implement a system that we can do, and then breathe some fire into these players. Like you said, I don't want to see the manager sitting there with his hands in his pockets. You know, get a captain who's going to grab somebody and go, come on, you know, let's get this done. Let's get it over the line. I don't see it, you know, like a Lewis Dunk type, you know, like, where's that? We're missing that, man. And that's
our culture. For me, our culture, the DNA of this club has been cleansed. Okay. Right. I believe that this club is about our history and teaching the young fans that come in the history of this club. Where are the signs of the history of this club? I expect to see a statue of Bill Nicholson within those gates, stood somewhere around that stadium, holding that thing. And when you take your son or your daughter down to the stadium and they say, who's that, Dad? That's Bill Nicholson, the greatest manager that the club ever had.
Well said, man.
That's what should be there. That's
Well
our
said.
culture. Okay. If you go to the dark side of London, I think they have 5 statues to their greats. Okay. I walk around that stadium. It's cleansed. It doesn't show our history. It doesn't. And I think the same goes when they walk into the changing room and the dressing rooms at Spurs. There should be the sayings and the comments, if you look back in history of Bill Nick, you know, about what it is to play for this club. There should be these sayings, not Keith Birkinshaw's rumoured saying there used to be a football club over there. Because quite honestly, you know, when you look at the stadium now, yes, it's beautiful, it's shiny, it's magnificent. But where is my history? Where is my history? Where is the museum? Where are some of the statues to the greats? I'm not just talking about, I'm talking about Jimmy Greaves. You know, Harry Kane is too early for him to have a statue. Yes, he's broken the records. But there are things that have been achieved at this club that seem to me to have been wiped away. And that, the winning DNA of our club, is what should be instilled into our youth and our academy players growing up, and to the players that come into the club. You come over from Brazil or Argentina, yeah, you're playing for the club, it's a big shiny stadium, but what do you know about our history? Okay. And that sometimes I feel they don't play with the passion from the old days. I feel that's really something that's really missing from our club now. And going back to Ange and how everything is going at the moment, Nuno, when he got sacked, he had 15 points from 10 games.
I will come on. John, can I ask a favour? I'm gonna come on to this
All
next,
right.
because I'll ask you a final question before we have
Go
to
on.
go for our first break. John, just very quickly, because you was in that stadium earlier today, there was obviously feeling that it was quite flat in there. I mean, where do you stand around the kind of, when it comes to, like I say, we looked a week before, and Russ was here with me for, I think, the Villa game.
Yeah.
John McGinn said, when that place gets going, it really gets going. It's really hard for an away player to handle that noise. I mean, are you of the opinion, John, it's a balance here? It's also for the players to give the fans something, because, again, massive boos at the full time. I say again, massive boos at the full-time whistle. And it got to a point where Ange seemed to be having, I don't want to blow it out of proportion, not to be having some kind of a disagreement with a fan who was heading down the tunnel. Now, again, I will make this point. Nobody knows, apart from Ange and that fan, what was said. If it was anything to do in his personal, anything to do with him personally, he's got every right, I think, to allow 100%, obviously, Ange to react in the way he does. If it's about his tactics, I think that's a different question. So just very quickly, Johnny, before we do go for the break, just give me a general thing about the atmosphere in that stadium, because you was there. Look,
There's no doubt when the players give the fans something, we give back in bucket loads. You know, you can feel the whole atmosphere lift. And confidence breeds confidence. You know, they feed off of it. But at the same time, when it just gets worse and worse and worse, it has a draining effect. And I think that's what happened today. But I think when that goal went in, when Bentancur's fantastic header went in, the crowd lifted, but then it went flat again. I think for me, though, Ange not coming over at the final whistle to salute the fans was a mistake. You know, it's all very well taking the adulation, but you have to take the criticism as well. And, I think that's what it's all about. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Excuse me.
That's fair. Listen,
Obviously,
what we are going to do. No, John, absolutely fine. Not a problem at all. We're going to come back and open with TJ if we can after this break. But before we do, we have had a whole host of questions that have come into the show. I'm going to get a couple of these out. We're then going to hear directly from Ange Postecoglou on his thoughts. And we'll just say, guys, that we can't thank you enough for your support. There's nearly over 6,000 of you that are watching us live. So again, can't thank you enough for the support for the show. Like TJ said when we opened this show for us, he made that point. We're going to say some things you love. We're going to say some things you disagree with. It's very hard to please, as we're very lucky to have a really big audience that humbles us all. But at the same time, there's a lot to discuss in this last one on Spurs. So it will feel like a bit of a bumper one. So please do forgive me. I am going to bring in, if I can, some of those comments that we've had after the game. Then we are going to go to what Ange just said in the media. Now, in terms of those questions that have come into this show, I've had so many. Gary R. Ward says, with the same number of losses as Ipswich, we can't keep giving teams a head start. Expect to stage dramatic comeback victories, especially at home. If we want to become a consistently winning team, we need to beat lower level sides. Our performances this season have been far too inconsistent, and losing to winless teams is simply inexcusable. Minor Falcon says, all poor Spurs losses seem to have the key same ingredients. Lots of possessions, early missed opportunities, poor crosses, front three struggles, same poor defending. David Lynch said, just a win. That's all we needed for this game. We would have went into the international break in third. Next step would be a visit to Man City with our heads up there and then being shaky. But no, an absolutely pathetic performance. I truly don't know where we go from here. Keith Nicholson says, will Ange be in a job this time when we look forward to April? And I think, again, we've discussed it heavily on this show. We'd love to get your opinion on whether the culture at the very, very top is manifesting itself through the football club, which is why we see such an inconsistency when it comes to managers, players amongst the football club. So, guys, got to say, that is a 4 or 5 over 150 questions that we've had in. We appreciate we can't cover them all. What we are going to quickly do, we are going to go for that first break of this show. You're going to hear from Ange Postecoglou in his presser, where they're going to zoom back round to TJ, who's very going to kindly open up that next part of this show. And again, guys, we thank you so much for your support. But next on this show, you're going to hear from Ange Postecoglou, who gives us his thoughts on the back of that defeat to Ipswich.
Look, we didn't start the game well at all. We were very sort of passive, particularly, without the ball, and even with the ball, I just felt we didn't get the tempo right, intensity right, and then we gave ourselves a mountain to climb. Second half we had the ascendancy, obviously, and enough opportunities, but didn't do enough of them.
You've said in the past you don't think that there are kind of themes, recurring themes to certain matches, but it does feel like falling behind at home has been one throughout the time here. Is that an issue? And if so, would you put it down to?
Look, they're all different sort of scenarios. When we fell behind against Villa, we were playing well. We weren't playing well today, so it's. I think you've got to look at it in isolation. Today was a different. It was a different scenario for me. I don't think it was anything like the previous time. And like I said, we gave ourselves too much of a sort of deficit to try and overcome. Obviously second half we had the opportunities to do that, but we should never have been in that position.
Why are you having these games like maybe Palace was similar where you are just more passive than
I don't know. That's down to me. That's my responsibility. The inconsistency we're having this year ultimately comes down to kind of me and my approach, and something I need to try and fix and see if I can help the players in that area.
Scored obviously last season, I played in 41 games. This year you've got Thursday, Sunday. Is the squad struggling to deal with kind of keeping the intensity there for the Thursday and straight after Sunday?
I shouldn't think so. I don't think so. I think if we were seeing that, we'd probably feel it more at the end of games. We're not feeling it at the end of the games. We're finishing games strong. So, it's just, we can't sort of start games like that at this level and expect to sort of just overcome, the sort of gap that exists between us and the other teams.
Andrew, can I ask, the crowd got wound up by the time wasted by Ipswich. Does it bother you, or is that fair game?
Look, I think it's the way the Premier League's going. I think it's pretty strategic now. I think their clubs are just you can almost do it by your clock, 20-minute mark. Some player will go down, they'll come over to their coach and get instructions, and it's funny. I always liked the Premier League because it wasn't like that, and you'd watch teams play in Europe and English teams would get frustrated by it, but now it's part of the game here as well, and nothing we can do about it. It's for us, if we want to sort of mitigate those kind of things, because we don't do it, we want the game to be played, then we shouldn't give ourselves or the opportunity for oppositions to do that. Yeah, I think Pepe's all right. He just got a bit of a knock, and yeah, Dom just jarred his knee. He was pretty sore, but he wanted to continue, so hopefully it's nothing too serious.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, there you go. That was Ange Postecoglou in his post-match presser. I mean, Russ and Jonny with the same expression on their face, absolutely shaking their heads. They're not happy. Before we come on to both of those chaps, TJ, I'm going to hand over to you. Mate, look, this is not going to be a pretty maybe part of the show for some that are really, really in love with Ange, because we have to cover difficult things, like you said on this show. Look, the stats at the moment in Ange's favour, when you look at our current form after 11 Premier League games, 16 points, 10th place, 5 wins, 5 draws, 1 defeat. Nuno Espirito Santo was sacked by Tottenham with 15 points from 10 games. One of the reasons I think, I pride ourselves as being the best Tottenham podcast without, disrespect to anybody else, is that we do tackle the difficult questions. That record, those sets of points at the moment, in your opinion, TJ, is this manager under pressure? And if so, I can't remember asking this again, where are we on that pressure point for you at the moment?
Yeah, he's definitely under pressure. Of course he is. Every football manager in the Premier League is under pressure. But, if you're playing at a quote-unquote Big Six club, then that pressure is amplified. No disrespect to the clubs that aren't considered Big Six. One thing I'm going to say about Ange that could really easily be fixed, and I think is actually vital, is that what he has to understand, that football, much like politics, is show business. A lot of it is entertainment, right? And being liked, making people laugh, which he did a lot of when he first came into the club, earned him a lot of love and respect from the fans, and it also buys you a little latitude. You can see the lads kind of shaking their head, nodding their heads and putting their thumbs up and stuff. That's really important. And so people are saying, maybe he's not going to be turning cartwheels down the Seven Sisters Road after a performance like that. Again, I understand that. But brother, you are being paid to air your opinion on Tottenham Hotspur. You're being paid handsomely. We all come onto this show because we love you, Rick. We love Lee. We love this podcast. And we love our club and we love our fans and our listeners. None of us are being paid to come and give up our time. And so if you are being paid and you are the figurehead of the club, you are the person who's got to go out there and give fans a little something when we have just been kicked to pieces. Come and put a smile on your face, big man. Come and tell us something that can give us some hope. I understand that you're down and despondent, but breathe some life into yourself before you step out onto that stage. I tell you what, man, how about putting on a suit jacket that fits so you don't look like some hobo that just crawled out from underneath a bus stop? Have some pride, man. It's show business. It's entertainment. People pay a lot of money and give up their weekends. To Johnny's point, going down with their sons and their daughters. I had a message from this lovely lad that follows us from Norway, who sent me a message. I took my sons to the game today from Norway, and that's what I had to say. I said, brother, I'm so sorry for you, man. So you are the figurehead of that club, Ange Postecoglou. Put on a jacket that fits, straighten your tie, and say something that can make us feel better, that when we come back after the international break, we're going to go to City and we're going to give them what's for. We've done it before and we could do it again. There's no point crying over what's happened. Yes, we would have been in third, but we spunked it. Very Spursy. So let's find a way to get out of that mentality, and that starts with you, mates. And so put on that, that demeanor of a leader who can take responsibility, and put some smiles on some faces. It's very important.
You know what, Russ? And thanks to that, TJ. I really appreciate those words there. I mean, Russ, you've spoken a lot about his demeanor when it comes to the media, and look, the reality is that when he seems to be faced by no disrespect, a broadcast, whether it's Sky, whether it's BBC, whether it's ITV, the face is down. It's very much kind of that. When it's a press conference, he projects. He does look at the respective journalist who's asking the questions. I do need to put into effect before I ask you this question, Russ. I have said on this show 1 week ago that I have seen an improvement in terms of the patterns of play. I have seen an improvement in terms of the respective results from last season. But the problem you've got is that when you have a nature of a result like that today, you can't help but then concern yourself thinking, is this club only able to, or the players able to raise themselves for the more high-profile games, a la Aston Villa, Man City, Man United away? And when it comes to the games that you've really got to, grit your teeth, get stuck into, the likes of Brighton away in that 20-minute period, the likes of Palace, the likes of here again, Ipswich, where teams are going to come at you. They're going to come at you because they know what it means to win at a club like Tottenham. For them, that's a big, big scalp. Look at the way those Ipswich fans went mental at full time. They know what it means. They know what it means to beat Tottenham away for a club that's been away from the Premier League for such a long time. So we do have, Russ, this bizarre habit of letting opponents take the lead, and that continued again during this game. Since the start of last season, Spurs have conceded the opening goal on 14 occasions, more than any other side apart from Manchester United, also on 14. It makes you think that as a team that you can maybe move out of second gear when facing jeopardy. But having to try, Russ, and consistently try and come from a goal down is just simply not sustainable. Similar to Wolves at home last season, there will be games where you come unstuck. And this is, again, a damning indictment of that. So I feel like I asked you this question a lot, Russ. You're not one to hide your views on the manager. You said in your opening piece for you that you don't want to see him go. But do you feel that...
Not right now.
If we do see this nature of up and down results, is that going to be a massive problem in general for him and his tenure at Spurs?
Definitely. He won't last if it carries on, excuse me, in the way that it's been going. And, a lot of our fans feel that he's had long enough now, season and a half nearly, and they want him to go. I mean, I thought his demeanor in the clip that you showed there, Rick, was of a man who probably realizes what the football club is all about now, and it's dawned on him, who probably realizes that a lot of the players he's got cannot play the way that he wants to play, and probably realizes that the Premier League could well be a step too far for him as a coach. So if you were thinking all three of those things, you'd be looking pretty downtrodden. And I think, honestly, that is where he probably is in his head. I totally agree with TJ. At the beginning of the season, it was, oh, mate, this is the way we do it, making everyone laugh. But now it's like a wake. In fact, it's not even that good when you see him doing press conferences after the games that have been bad performances. And I think Johnny's absolutely right. When you play rubbish, two bits of advice I would give him is go over and clap the fans. Johnny's absolutely right. And then you as the manager have to sit there, hold up your hands, call out some of your players, even admit some of your tactics were wrong, and actually talk to the fans as money-paying shareholders in the club who love the club, probably more than I do the manager, and actually show some anger, offer solutions. We don't see any of that. All we got today was, well, I've got to try and work those things out. Well, I mean... why does nobody in a press conference say to him, Ange, why do all the goals Tottenham concede almost, why are they carbon copies? And why can't you stop it, for example? But we all know it's rather sanitized. And I really do think that Ange Postecoglou now he is on shaky ground. He really is. Because if we go even lower than 10th come Christmas, I wouldn't be optimistic about him starting 2025 with us. I don't know anything. I'm just telling you how I read the situation. Of course, because as TJ correctly pointed out, look at the difference in points. Very few. If we go to City,
he is 3 points off third. Yeah.
Yes, but if we go to City and we win there, tall order, the way we're playing at the moment, but if we do, then it's beginning to look a little bit better. We go up a couple of places. And it's so infuriating that we have to watch occasional good football, but most of it lackluster nonsense.
Can I just say on this, I want to bring Jonny in. I mean, this is what TJ said actually, at the start of the show. You look at that table there. we are only 3 points off third. And again, I appreciate the point that, the form, as the chart will show you there, win-loss, 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 win-loss. I mean, that has been the nature of Spurs so far this season. It is the fact that we have lost 5 out of the last 11. It will especially sting that Palace and Ipswich have earned their first and only league victories against Spurs this season. We have also, to put this in perspective, we have conceded the first goal against every promoted side Ange Postecoglou has faced at home. It is a damning indictment of a stat. No one wants to hear it, but that is the case for those that really firmly believe Ange is still the right man for the football club. There have been questions about his man management. Spence is on the bench. He's watching Pedro Porro having a very, very difficult game. I think it's fair for me to say. Pedro Porro, in general, we lost possession 26 times during that defeat to Ipswich. Wasn't great for either of the Ipswich's goals. Did, of course, provide the ball that Bentancur did head home to get Spurs back into the game in the second half. And Jonny, I know, just to be clear, before I get you on this point, the away form hasn't been great under Ange. It's played 24, won 8, drawn 7, lost 9. Those wins in there for context are against Bournemouth, relegated Burnley, relegated Luton, Palace, Forest, Villa at 10 men, Sheffield United relegated, and Man United 10 men. Spurs have gone behind at some point in 14 of their 24 Premier League away games under Ange Postecoglou. They've only won one of those games, albeit the 5-2 at Burnley over a year ago. So we are acutely aware the away form isn't good enough. The home form, in contrast, has been much better. We've only lost to Arsenal, and we have won all of the subsequent home games before this one. So like I say, we are now sitting on our second home defeat of the season. Jonny, what does this manager, I'm not sure if we're ever going to get this point under you, what does he need to do to prove to you that he can succeed here? Is it just results? Is it just his mannerisms? What does he need to do to prove to you he can turn this around? Can he do that with you as a fan?
Well, he has the dress code and the demeanor of an undertaker. And today I feel like I've been at a funeral. That's how it feels to me today. He's his own worst enemy. You guys know what it's like, the press are like, okay? If you give them, if you feed them, they'll grab it with both hands and they'll make a huge meal out of it. And he keeps giving them what they want. Going on about, we don't care about set pieces, we don't call out corners. I always win something in my second season. All of these things are things that are totally unnecessary to say. Stick to the facts. And as Russ says, it's how you carry yourself. And TJ have said, this is theatre. You want to entertain on the pitch. It's about entertaining off the pitch. Be the man, be the showman off the pitch. Accept it when it goes wrong. Say, look, I hold up my hands. I thought I was going down the right direction, but it's gone wrong. I might have to rethink. It is who we are, mate. This is it. I'm not for changing. He's his own worst enemy. All I look for over a period of, what are we now, 16 months into to his appointment, I look for progression. What I see, guys, is regression. I'm starting to see regression. Since that Chelsea game at home last season, I think his win ratio is something like 36%. Now, I'm sorry. That's not good enough, Ricky. It's not good enough. Scraping through against Coventry, beating Karabag, beating Ferencváros. They're not landmark victories. I just think that be humble, treat us like fans, because we're not idiots. We're not idiots. They can see what's in front of them. You can't lie to them and say, oh, well, I thought we were okay, when we obviously weren't. That was a shambolic performance today. It was heartless. It was gutless. And, I do question whether some of these players are actually playing for Ange. Madison has gone backwards. I'm not going to go into the Madison now.
Well,
but
very quickly, Jonny, because I think I am actually going to James Madison, because something just doesn't seem right there very quickly. If you don't mind bringing us your view on this, because with James, let's be clear about it. I mean, look, how can I put this in the most politest way? I think James hasn't hit the heights of what we all maybe expected to see at Tottenham, with due respect to what we saw at Leicester. Now, again, I think as fans, I don't sit there and intensely watch his Leicester performances, his commentary performances. But from what I saw from James, we were getting a player that was capable of delivering big moments. Man City away, FA Cup final. He's a player that I think could produce big moments. We are not seeing that James Madison at Tottenham. Now, there's two reasons for that. Number one, we're either not playing to his strengths. Or number two, the level of club that he stepped up for is simply too bigger for him. But the thing that worries me is that in that game today, a prime example, James Madison is on the bench. We are losing 2-1 at home to Ipswich Town. He is the vice captain of the football club, and he's been introduced, I think, in the 86th, 87th minute. What does that tell you about Ange's faith in the vice captain of this football club, that he's not getting onto the pitch until 4 or 5 minutes to go, and was actually asked beforehand of James is, feeling around the England squad, and Ange was asked before the game why James isn't around there. He turned around and said, mate, scoring a free kick don't get you in the England squad. Now, I'm not trying to sensationalise, I'm not trying to blow anything out of proportion, but it does feel there's something more around this James Madison scenario with Ange, because every time Spurs are chasing a goal, he doesn't come on. He's not starting now. Kulusevski's got his place. You could argue that Kulu now is a much more preferred Ange number 10. Is there something more sinister in this James Madison not featuring under Ange Postecoglou scenario that we've got here?
I mean, I think looking at the way he's been playing since he's come back from injuries tells you everything you need to know. Personally speaking, I think that the system doesn't suit James Madison. He's a player that likes to play in space behind the front two and slip the passes through. But when you have a system that vacuum packs the midfield, you've got inverted wingers, you've got inverted backs, you've got crowded midfield. And the way to negate it is, if you're the opposition, is to pack out that midfield and make it literally make it overcrowded, which is why we so often see him coming deep to try and get the ball. For me, he's not a deep line playmaker. He's not a leader. He goes down on the ground far too easily. He's always remonstrating with the referee. Carry on with the game. I don't think he's an example. I really don't think he's an example at all to the younger players. And is every reason. I've been calling for him to be dropped for a number of weeks, and I take my hat off to Ange. I can sit here and criticise Ange, and I have to give him credit where credit's due. And I think he was absolutely right to drop him. And even when he came on today, a player of his ilk should be demanding that ball. When you look at top players in that position, that's what they do. And he's falling short of that. And I think he's come to this club as the man. And unfortunately, you're coming to a club where there's lots of players of equal standing and higher standing than you. And you have to perform. No player is bigger than the club. And unless you perform, I don't care who you are, if you're not good enough and you're not performing, then you have to step down. And Angie's 100% right. The problem is right now, we don't have that creative player. Kulu's having a very good season, but we don't have that Cunha or other players that are around the Premier League right now. The Eze, who I think are real Spurs players who can take us to the next level. But look, this is Ange's team. I don't want to hear that this isn't Ange's team. He's had 3 windows. He's got rid of a lot of the players that he didn't want around, and he's brought in players that he really wanted. I thought the only player that came out with credit today, in my opinion, was Bentancur. He tried his best, and he's really been in form the last few games. But one player can't swing the whole game. Excuse me. I could see how frustrated he was during the game today. But James Madison is getting exactly what he deserves, being on the bench.
Very quickly, guys, we're going to cover that and just where we are on Ange Postecoglou. Poor Jonny. I think Spurs are trying to officially kill him off. Like I say, fight. He might have to go something stronger than water there. TJ, we've had this quick chat on Ange and discussion over him. For you, you remain steadfast, still the right man for the football club as we enter, like I say, I think when you're hitting kind of mid-November, beginning of December, we are now approaching business point of the season. For you, still the right man and can turn
It's not so much
around?
right man for the club, Rick, as I don't feel that sacking him and gambling on somebody else is going to help us more than perhaps the manager bump. I don't think he is the big issue right now. To Jonny's point, this is his team and he has to take responsibility. And like I said, you are the figurehead of this club. So straighten your tie, put a jacket on that fits, and come out and give us something that we can believe in. You know, take us into the next game, especially when we've got an international break and we have to sit here for 2 weeks and stew. Give us something to believe in. That's really important. And he needs to address that. And again, if he doesn't, that just smacks to me of arrogance. You know, it is entertainment. The people saying, oh, it's not entertainment, it's football. If it's not entertainment, why is it televised? You know, there are hundreds of millions of people around the world who don't watch television, don't watch films. They just watch sports. So it's important. Okay. So is he the man for long term? I'm not saying that, Rick. I'm just saying that right now, I don't think it helps us. I think it hurts us more than it helps us. Now, talking about Madison, talking about Kulu, I totally agree with Jonny. I think we had a couple of games from Madison before he was injured where he showed us what he could do. And he was injured, came back, like wasn't that great, got dropped. And to me, has reacted a little bit like a petulant child. So if we look at Bentancur, who we were also just talking about, he, poor guy, suffered some horrific injuries and busted his ass to come back early. And my goodness, what a player he's become. I loved as well, not only was it a beautiful technical goal that he scored today, an absolute bullet of a header into the roof of the net. We saw him running back to the halfway line, blowing kisses to the fans. You know, that's what we need, man. Show us that you care. And so for me, he's much more of a captain or a vice captain than James Madison is. Speaking of that, Kulu, right? I think Kulu, he could be the future of this club. I think he's a really talented player. And again, just for us, just for the panel and for people watching and listening, we're looking for improvements. I think, you know, Kulu was tossed out by Juve. So was Bentancur. I think we've brought them to Tottenham. And I'm not going to lie and say I watched them in Italy because I didn't. But I do think we have improved them and we've improved Kulu enormously under Ange since playing him centrally. I love also the attitude that he has. You know, when he has a great game and he's interviewed and he speaks really well and he speaks very honestly and with passion, he says he's working hard every single day to become one of the best players in the world. So if you play at Tottenham, that should be your aspiration. I want to be one of the best players in the world. We need more of that in this team. And if the manager can't instill that, then okay, let's get it done on the pitch. Let's find a captain who's going to instill that in people. And for me, that's people like Bentancur and Decky. Love them both.
TJ, thank you so much. Russ, to close with you on this point before we do look at the match incidents. Russ, simple question I'll ask you. And people are going to go mad at me for asking. So I have to ask the questions. Is the Europa League affecting us? I think that is now on the back of what it's our third game where we've now lost since being in the Europa League. And I must just caveat that point. I think Jonny's even going to take a shot of, he's going for the can at the moment. I was going to take a shot of wine there. Or something stronger. Maybe the Zivanier, Jonny, increasing with me. It might be by the time this show finishes. Russ, is the Europa League a problem? Because we do rotate for that competition. We made several changes. Ange denied it in his presser being a problem. Is it a problem for Tottenham? Because that's one of the common themes that we found down the years, as you know, under Pochettino. Conte wanted us out of Europe, as you remember, is that Thursday to Sunday cycle. Is it a problem? Is that affecting the team? When, again, I'll make that point, not all the 11 that are playing on the Thursday are playing again in the following Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's a problem, Rick, when everybody around you says it's a problem. I'm not sure how much the players think so. One thing I do know is the Europa League is the most likely route, if there is one, into the Champions League for Tottenham Hotspur, although there could be fifth place, incidentally, couldn't there, this season. So I think it's a very easy thing to say, oh, well, we played Thursday night, football, and so on Sunday, we're not going to play very well. I'm not utterly convinced myself that it is a genuine problem. It's a kind of psychotic, psychological one, maybe a psychotic one as well, but that people sort of hang on to when things don't go right. but on the same subject, do we have a strong enough squad to win the Europa League? If they're all fit, maybe. But we definitely need some more people to come in if that's our ambition. And as I said at the start of the show, Champions League, Europa League and Premier League is where the action is.
And just so I'm clear on this point, and so to again go one final one here on Ange. I mean, Russ, you mentioned the point. He needs a good decent few of results now. Do you fear for him in the long term, Russ, this season? Because I'll be honest, where I'm at with him, I think he'll be here to the end of the season. That's just my view, unless he does lose 5 or 6 on the bounce. At which point, I think, can I be honest with you? I think come the end of the season, I think Ange is just as likely to walk away from Tottenham as Tottenham would be to sack him. And the reason why I say that is if you look at Ange's career, and we're very lucky we've had John Grecian on this show that has wrote a book on Ange. We've had Vince Regari on this show again, who's covered Ange in such detail, those two that have wrote books on him. They've made that point that come the end of the season, he himself has to be really motivated to want to carry on the project. And again, if you look at the point there over the course of the seasons, he needs to feel motivated. He needs to feel like he wants to really, in his opinion, be able to take this job forward. And I do feel that, like previous managers, that frustration about the squad not listening, the board of maybe not giving you the tools, does start to really grain on a manager. So where do you feel in terms of where we are on that balance at the moment, very quickly?
Very, very quickly, he's hamstrung by bringing in top quality players because they need top quality wages. And the club have decided they don't want to go the top quality, high wage route. Otherwise, we would have probably Eze as a Tottenham player right now. The interest was
Trossard,
there, but the
we would have had
wages
Trossard
were
like that. 19 million they wanted for him. 24 hours later, he was sold to Arsenal. Sorry to jump in, Russ, but
no. But that's the way the club.
brother.
That's the way the club are going. We mustn't
Bruno
forget.
Fernandes, another one.
Yeah.
Jack Grealish, when he was at Villa, was another.
Well, he
now
might
we're
be
looking
coming
at again,
back,
but of course
apparently.
we won't get him because he wants 150 grand
Of
a week.
course.
Well, why
Of course we
don't we
won't.
pay him 150 grand a week? If
Well,
that's
because
what
they
we need to pay him.
don't want to. They're shaping up the balance sheet for an investor or to sell.
Yeah.
I think.
Can you imagine if we had somebody like Jack
pretty
Grealish
obvious.
go through the door? So we're
Sorry?
talking about what can we do short term that might give us a bit of an injection. Like, none of us are football managers, right? We don't have to pay him his 150 grand a week, but I can see that bringing somebody like Jack Grealish through the door, who's a big star, a big name. He's won everything there is to win. Whether he, sat on the bench for most of it doesn't matter. The man's walking in with medals all in the inside of his jacket. He steps out the car and the Champions League falls out of his back pocket. He's done it all. And God knows we're crying out.
Why would he want to come to Spurs?
Yeah,
I think that's
but
why would he want to come to you?
If I'm Jack Grealish, he's 28, right? He's 28. He's kind of done it all. I think he's played 54 minutes this season, Russ. So I hear what you're saying, brother. Like, why would he come to Spurs?
Why would he come to Spurs? He'd have other options all over the place.
I'm sure he does, but is there something about kind of being the guy that can unlock the unpickable lock that is Tottenham Hotspur? Is there something in that? Is London attractive to him? I mean, I'm clutching at straws here, man. I'm trying.
Yes, you are. To be honest.
The winning mentality.
To go back to just to answer the question very, very quickly, Rick,
Sure.
In the Premier League, if it's still up and down, and the league position isn't good, if Manchester United knock us out the Carabao Cup before Christmas and we go out early in the FA Cup, it's difficult for Ange Postecoglou really to have any confidence in staying as our manager.
And John, very quickly, accompany you on this point. Go on, finish off for us on this segment.
If you have big aspirations and you're willing to take risks, you buy Jack Grealish when he was 25 million, not haggle over.
For sure, brother. Yeah,
and
Poch wanted him,
early.
and Levy said no.
Yeah,
he wanted. It was 28 million, and Poch said, "Let's get him in," and Levy said no. But the same with Bruno Fernandes, and we ended up with that other Fernandes. I don't even remember his name.
Yes,
remember that other guy.
But this is the thing. This is ambition. We lack ambition, and it starts from the very top. I'm coughing tonight. I think actually the only thing Ange has given me today is his cough.
Maybe.
I mean, and thankfully not his jackets.
And not his jackets. I can ask you a question. Guys, when I was growing up, my mother always said to me, Jonathan, she said, if you're talking to someone and they don't look you in the eye, don't believe a word they're telling you, right? And Ange never looks at him.
No.
Never,
That's right.
ever, ever.
That's right.
So I'm asking, when he's with the players, is he looking them in the eye, or is he looking at them? I know he's obsessed with flooring and dirt that may be lying on the floor, but is he actually engaging with them? Is he actually engaging with them? Eye-to-eye contact when he's delivering his message. I don't know. His body language to me, Remy, you're an actor. That it's about engagement. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I've often thought that, Jonny. Like, and when you were saying, because you were at the stadium earlier, and my friends and my brother, they're always there as well. So I'm constantly hearing about what's happening at the stadium. To hear that they were kind of listless and dull, even in the warm up. Like, what happens in the dressing? I mean, listen, I live in America, but I just haven't got into the American sports. I just can't really get into them. But I love a movie about American football, right? I love that. Or I loved Friday Night Lights, watched every episode, and so, those speeches that they make, and then the players come bursting out of the dressing room and break through the paper, and the girls are doing flips, and there's fireworks going off and all that kind of thing. Like, try that. Do something that's going to get these guys fired up. Do a
like a
clear eyes, full hearts can't lose speech. Get Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights in there. Do something to fire these guys up. If they're kind of wandering around, grab them and breathe some life into these guys, because again, that grit and determination, as we saw today, that nicks you 6, 9, 10 points a season. And that's the difference between finishing 6th and finishing 2nd, or potentially even, winning something. Lol, here come the comments.
quite like Ange. I'm losing control of this show tonight. These guys are amazing. Russ, you wanted to make a point there, Russ. Let's come to you. Then we're going to go to the match incidents.
Well, all I'll say is,
quickly.
I mean,
Please.
to be serious from a media point of view, whoever was given the job of media advice and media training for Ange, and indeed a number of our players, and not just from our club. I mean, seriously, Tottenham should be asking for their money back, because they haven't done a good job, I can tell you.
And that's it. Jonny, be pleased to know Trevor Steele, Jonny, wants you to be the next manager. So I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll let you negotiate your package.
Let me tell you something. All the managers that I wanted pre-Ange have all gone now, so I'm definitely not for sacking Ange. Slot was my number 1, Gallardo was number 2, and Amorim was number 3. So if he was to be sacked now, all of my list is gone. So Iriola's probably the next on the list. So who knows? He'll probably be gone soon. But thanks, Trevor.
Thank you so much, Jonny. Listen, guys, as I get, we're joined by Broadcaster Russ Wiliams, Jonny H, and the actor TJ Ramini. Guys, over 6,000 of you are watching us live. Thank you so much for your support on this show. You can't say we're not trying to cover all angles, all flooring, anything you want in the show. We're trying to mention it. TJ's brought in Friday Night Live there. It does feel like a WWE event here, trying to control everybody. I will not lie to you. I'm doing the worst refereeing performance you've ever seen since Graham Poll all those years ago. We are going there. We are. We're going to fly through. We are going to fly through the match incidents. I feel like we've tried to cover so much on this last one on Spurs. A reminder, can I just say very quickly, we are delighted to be sponsored by NordVPN. Nord, they are the fastest, most reliable VPN in the world, and from listening, watching last one on Spurs over a number of years, for those that are on their European away days, their tours, they want to watch their favourite programmes back home, you can do that with NordVPN by going to our website, which gives you 4 extra months for free on a 2-year plan. No risk renewals, 30-minute money guarantee. NordVPN.com/LWOS. Thank you to Nord always for sponsoring our show. We greatly appreciate those guys. Look, we're going to fly in, guys, I said, to the team if we can. It's been a long show, so good to know the incidents of this show won't take too long, but we do have to cover off the game itself. In terms of lineups for Spurs, we made a number of changes to the side. It was a boost with Romero starting a midfield 3 of Sarr, Bentancur and Decky, which is shown to be, before this game, the club's strongest in recent weeks. Timo Werner back after a groin strain, but Mikey Moore, who had been struggling with a virus during the week, remained out. Jed Spence was back on the bench after missing out in recent weeks. That team read Vicario Porro Romero, Dragoshin Udogie, Sarr, Bentancur, Kulusevski, Johnson, Solanke, and along with him, of course, we had Son starting the game as the forward. Subs-wise, Forster, Davis, Spence, Gray, Bissouma, Madison, Bergvall, Werner, Lankshire to make up that Spurs team. Now, early on, Burgess headed an effort against the crossbar after getting the better of Dragoshin from a corner. We'll come on to Rada in a bit more detail shortly. Solanke had a shot deflected over the bar at the other end. Lovely run from Son. Party cut of players before curling an effort wide. And it was comfortable for the dive in Muric. And Spurs really, in that opening 15 minutes, were really struggling to get to grips with Ipswich's press. Romero chipped a lovely ball over the top to Solanke, who chested down and forced Muric into a fine low save, and then prevented a deflective cross from creeping over the line again, as Spurs did apply some pressure in the early stages with a Johnson chance, as we mentioned. But the visitors did go in front as Sammy Szmodics produced a superb overhead kick after both Johnson and Porro just reacted too slow in terms of who was going to deal with that moment in the game. A deserved lead. And look, again, I mentioned that point. Spurs have now conceded first in 13 of the last 15 home games in 2024. I mean, look, it's not a nice stat to read. It's certainly not a nice stat to hear or to have to watch that goal back in the nature of how Spurs conceded it. Jonny, you was at the stadium, so I will stick with you on this one. Just what a poor goal to concede. And again, nobody really taking accountability at the back there to try and stop that goal from happening. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, Sammy Szmodics and Liam Delap are a threat up front. And I highlighted it before the game. This wasn't after the event. I highlighted all the dangers. Hutchinson, Delap, Leith. And I thought Sammy Szmodics scored a good goal. But, I mean, you can't stand around watching. They looked a threat. They said to Spurs, you have the ball, take the ball, but we are confident that we can break and hurt you on the counter-attack. And that's what they did. And they bullied us to a certain extent. I thought it was a well-taken goal and to be applauded. I thought they played very well today. Yes, we didn't play well, but I thought they played well and they handled us. And they rode out the second half very well, which we obviously will come on to that. But I think under pressure with the fans, egging us on, I thought they did very, very well. They looked really, really solid. And their keeper had a really good game.
They did. Yeah, I think you made the point on it you said before the game of the threat Ipswich posed. And I think, again, fair point to say that Ipswich have been in most of the games they featured in this season. So I think that's like you have to bear in mind that,
Correct.
There's this notion Ipswich, of course, they haven't won a game, but you have to bear in mind that they've been in most games this season. Unlucky the week before not to get their first win of the season. And so typical. I think, Jonny, you'll mention a point. So typical they're Spurs next because we know what a doctor does to them, right?
100%. If you weren't ill before, Dr. Tottenham will take care of it.
Oh, I mean, can I just go back to that point, if I can, on that first goal, TJ, bringing you in, and we'll go to Russ on this, because, what you're asking for in this moment is some form of accountability, somebody to deal with the issue. And you could tell really from the moment this ball came into the box, somebody has got to deal with it. Somebody's got to deal with it. And as it became more apparent, even on showing here on these stills, one of Johnson or Porro have got to deal with the situation. The most staggering thing for me is that an Ipswich player is allowed to have the time and the freedom, TJ, to score an overhead kick inside the 6-yard box. I mean,
listen, I think one of the reasons why they're so rare, they're not difficult to do, right? We probably all remember doing them back in our school days or whatever, but there's never the space. Even if you try to do it, as you're falling back, you're hitting the two guys that are marking you from the back, and then the two guys that are fighting for the ball, you end up kicking one of them and just kind of falling over and the ball bobbles away. So yeah, the fact that he's allowed the time and the space, again, man, that's mentality, that's complacency and arrogance. If we were playing, a Big Six club or, a glamour club, are we marking that guy? Of course we are. All of these people are capable, like people playing in the Premier League are capable. And seriously, to Jonny's point, he said, these guys were playing in League 2 seasons ago, or League 1 or whatever it was. And, up they go, and boom, now they're taking a huge scalp in the Premier League. So you have to respect every single opponent. And to be honest, like I said, before the game, whatever speeches are being made, if any are being made, it's about going out there and bringing the best version of yourself. Doesn't matter who you play, whether you're playing Coventry in the Cup or whether you're playing Manchester City at the Etihad. You're playing for Tottenham Hotspur, and the pride that you have in yourself as a professional and in the club should be more than enough to motivate you, so you don't let weak efforts like that end up in the back of the net, because it's too hard to score. It's just too hard to win games in the Premier League. I mean, listen, although we're still the Premier League team that scored the most. Crazy. I mean, I don't know how we've managed it, but we have. And so defensively, we just look so shaky, man. And like, I know you said that we're going to talk about Dragozin and whatever, but so, we'll probably leave that for then. But again, it just kind of popped into my mind and somebody mentioned it on the comments. Remember when Jose wanted Skriniar and we went and got Joe Rodon? I mean, anyway, so I don't want to get into transfers again, but pride and professionalism should prevent a goal like that ever ending up in the back of the net.
Yeah, that's really, really fair points. I mean, look, you can't disagree with that. And, to come on to that second goal, TJ, we will come on to Radu, and I will probably come over to Russ for this because, after Spurs move breaks down, they counter on the left-hand side. Szmodics' centre is pushed out by Vicario onto Dragoshin. I mean, the goal itself is such an unbelievable mess from a Tottenham perspective that it's really hard to understand how we've allowed this nature of a goal again. And you make this point, I think, Russ, on a number of occasions, that it's a carbon copy goal that Spurs seem to carry on conceding from very similar angles and very similar predictability of how that happens. Again, just talking you through that, Szmodics' low cross is palmed out by Vicario against Dragoshin. It rolls back towards the line where Delap simply just has to smash the ball into the net. For Dragoshin now, not a kind stat for him. Radu has made an error leading to conceding the goal in each of his last 2 Spurs appearances. It's not been a great week. As we mentioned, an absolute mess of an early header, which allowed Ipswich to break on Spurs' goal. He's then at fault for the second goal itself. Got better, but this was a real shaky display with him in general. And again, I will make this point. I know we shared over the weekend a comment from his agent that says he's absolutely delighted to now be in the Tottenham side and is really happy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how we are at the moment. I do suggest his agent keeps quiet and allows his client to do his talking on the football pitch.
That would be a winning season. To shut up Dragozin's agent. That I take that as a cup.
Honestly, but on this point, I will come back with TJ and Jonny on this. How concerning is that goal, Russ, again, in the element of the way the nature we concede it?
We're reliably unreliable at defending. I mean, we really cannot defend very well across the board as a football team. It's as simple as that. So we cannot be surprised at the kind of defending that we saw today. I mean, awareness of attacking players, as TJ was saying, it's non-existent. And, there has to be a plan. What we do when the opposition attacks down the right, down the left, through the centre, who goes where, set pieces, don't go zonal, to mark your men. It's a shambles a lot of the time. And it's so frustrating for all of us who watch Spurs, because you just go, oh my goodness, again. Why can't the manager and the coaches see it? One of the great mysteries of the lovely Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Can I on this point say, I mean, I know TJ, every time I mention Radu and his agent, I know TJ's ready to burst at me. And I don't blame him, because there is a feeling amongst the Spurs fan base that why can't we keep this guy's mouth quiet? I mean, Jonny, I don't want to age you, mate. You've been around Spurs a long time in your life. Have you ever known somebody's agent to do this amount of waffling? With no disrespect, a guy that when he has had opportunities hasn't really performed today. And I wanted to make this point that I think for Radu personally, I think he's been really unlucky that he's not had a how do I put this? He's not had a consistent centre back next to him. 1 week it's Davis, 1 week it's Romero, 1 week it's Mickey van der Ven. I think for any player, that's really hard to try and find a rhythm when you're not getting regular football. You're getting your partner next to you changed every time you play. And again, as much as you can definitely say there's been errors there, and the stats are the stats, right? He's had a really bad last couple of games in the Premier League. How much is the responsibility, Jonny, on the club to give the player a fair shot and allow him to be fielded in a way in which he is having regular consistency alongside him? Because chopping and changing his partner, again, you could say it's through no fault of our own, because we've lost Van der Ven to injury. We've lost Romero to injury at times as well. Where do you portion the blame on this? Is it the player? Is it the manager? Where does that go in terms of that player himself and his performances at the moment?
I think at the beginning, when we signed him in January, excuse me, I've definitely got a touch of the Anges.
It's when you start calling me mate, I'll start being worried,
Yeah.
Johnny.
If I start developing an Australian accent, please give me a shock. I think at the beginning of the season, from January when we signed him, I think a lot of people were questioning, when we had issues, why was he not getting minutes? And to suddenly throw him in into the Lions' den. Look, I'm not going to write off a player that's 22 years of age. He has had some very poor shows. I mean, but we saw in the Euros, he had a fantastic Euros. He really was outstanding. I haven't seen the Dragusin that I saw when he was in Italy and when he was playing for Romania, commanding in the air, very dangerous at corners. I just haven't seen it at all. And look, the old adage, confidence breeds confidence, is very much in play here. I think, he can clearly hear when he makes a mistake, how the crowd react to it. And we've seen what's happened with Timo. Start snatching at balls, you start making rash decisions. And again, he needs someone to put an arm around him or have a word with him and try to get his confidence back. As for his agent, I think his agent would be fantastic in Hollywood, right? But this is not Hollywood. This is the Lions. This is football. This is football. And I don't know what field he was in before, but he really needs to quieten it down, because there's no way he'll be playing for Real Madrid anytime soon, playing like this. But listen, we cannot write him off. As I said, he's 22.
Yep.
Most centre-backs don't mature until they're 26. I remember John Stones, when he first signed for Manchester City, he was having mistake after mistake after mistake, and people were questioning Pep's choice of a player, and we all can see how he progressed as time goes on. So right now he's not the player, but that's not to say that as time goes on, it will develop. I actually don't think this system suits him personally. I think he's more a conventional centre-back, and I think he would do very well in that sort of system. But a high line is not for him.
Don't say it's bad, Johnny. I'm just worried every time I throw a player at you, you keep telling me the system's not working for him, which probably is explaining why we feel. But
I believe in flexibility.
Yes,
Look, I'll give you an analogy, okay? If I'm a boxer and my manager says, okay, tomorrow we're fighting Fernando Lopez, and he said, well, I'll send you the videos of how he fight. I don't need to see the videos, but he's a southpaw. No, I don't need to see him as a southpaw. Yeah, but it's fine. Don't worry. And then you fighting somebody else, and he's got a long range. He fights it. I don't need to see that. That's nonsense. I'm sorry. You have to analyze your other team's strengths to try to negate them and try to exploit their weaknesses. Therefore, in every game, you should look to change and mix it up, which is what Thomas Frank does, which is what Slot does, and what top managers do. I don't believe one size fits all. Ange does. That's where we separate, I'm afraid. And that's where I have a problem with Ange. Do I hope Ange succeeds? Yes. Do I think he's going to succeed? No.
Johnny, he always says it as it is. Hollywood, let's go to Hollywood. Not literally. I haven't got a feeling by you saying let's go to Hollywood, but I'm going to go.
It's definitely not Cricklewood.
Not Brentwood either. I'm going to go to the wonderful TJ Ramini. Can I just say, TJ's always just for Brentwood. You would definitely see TJ in Brentwood, can I just say. I'm not putting him in the Anyways Essex just yet. I'm not sure he wants to be in the Anyways Essex, bless his heart. We're not going to downgrade him that much. TJ, you said, I think a couple of days ago, I think you reacted to one of Spurs' posts with the David Brent emoji when he said he can't keep his mouth shut, the agent of Radu Dragusin. I mean, is it a way, TJ, just very quickly on this, because we do need to look to wrap up this show, that the agent is actually putting the player under more pressure by continually spat on his mouth?
Man, definitely. And also, the issue is, I mean, look, there's lots of issues with his agent. I don't want to talk about him that much, to be honest, because that's why he does it. You know, he keeps making all these comments, and everybody comments on his comments, me included. So I got sucked into his trap. So to be honest, I just don't want to talk about him anymore. But as far as the effect that it has on his player, to Jonny's point, the kid's 22 years old. You know, he's 22 years old. He's still learning his craft, and he's come into a completely different league. There's no comparison between the Italian league and the Premier League. I'm not talking about quality or legacy or history or anything like that. I'm just talking about pace and the style of play, and also the level of competition in the Premier League. I don't think your most ardent Serie A fan would say that Serie A is as competitive as the Premier League, because it just isn't. So he's still learning his trade. The thing that, for me, doesn't do him any favors is that he has this kind of torpid, languid style of play that only the very best centre-backs in the world can get away with, having that kind of style of disposition and still being really effective, like a Virgil van Dijk, like a Thiago Silva, like Pepe back in the day, like, you know, these guys that kind of glide around and never put a foot wrong, like Maldini, if you really want to go back in the day. And he's nowhere near that good. So I'd like to see a bit more snap and a bit more bite. Use that physicality. The man's a lump. He looks like a Bond villain. So use that. Use your strength. Use your kind of your wiles, and just be a defender that centre forwards don't want to try to take the ball around, or don't even want to stand next to when a ball is coming into the box off a corner. That's something that he could really add to his game, again, just with a decision, because that's not an ability thing. That's just a mentality thing. Let me just be faster to the ball. Let me never allow a person to turn. I don't want to talk too much about that lot, but Saliba, right, is this kind of Rolls Royce of a centre-back that kind of glides around, and Gabriel's nowhere near the footballer that he is, but he's a real physical specimen and something, you know, he's really someone that you would never want to mess with. Radu could do himself a favour and just be a bit more like that, because, brother, you ain't Virgil van Dijk. If you get there one day, I'd love it, especially if you're still wearing a Tottenham shirt. But for now, let's have a bit more of a, like that Murillo guy or Igor.
Yeah, no. I mean,
Brighton, you know, that Murillo guy at Nottingham Forest.
Yep.
I wouldn't want any piece of him. Be a bit more like that.
He's more like Dick Van Dyke at the moment.
Right. Listen,
If only he had the footwork, Jonny.
I'll tell you, honestly, on this point. Right, well, listen, I say we go into half time. And look, again, really, really big frustrations at half time. You know, many will not believe that Spurs were so sloppy. You know, the second goal we should have shot or should have scored. It was an awful decision that it's down the other end in the goal, but terrible first half. Big boos at half time, deservedly so. And Spurs really, look, it was another subpar first half performance where we knew we had a lot to do to change it. Many would say bizarrely, no substitutions at half time from Ange Postecoglou, decided to stick with the remaining 11 men on the field. Solanke seemed to bundle one home, which many thought was going to stand, but Ipswich were claiming handball. Replay showed Bentancur's flick on, and Solanke knocked it towards the guy, and it did flick off his hand. VAR checked it and deemed it being no goal, and it was disallowed. Min-hyuk continued to take time with his goal kicks, which was infuriating the Spurs crowd. And, you know, that time was clocking up, to be fair, and Ange has made this point now, which does worry me about how much now respective managers are sharing and seeing, is that what Spurs hate more than anything is being disrupted during a game. Ange made that point after Palace, and you're now seeing this, that frequently managers are slowing that game down, disrupting Tottenham, taking the room out of it, and we don't like it. I want to ask you, Russ, on this question. I am very, very conscious of time. Bearing in mind we're trying to wrap up in the next 5 here. That how worrying is that, Russ? You know, manager has publicly said, we don't like the game being slowed down. We are not fans of the dark art. He's made that clear. I think, personally, for me, the great teams use these things to with no disrespect, they use them to their advantage. You know, we don't really have dark arts. We don't 100%. Really. I mean, should we be publicly coming out here saying this stuff that we're not fans of the dark arts, that, you know, we don't like the time being wasted? I think you've got to play it to your advantage in the certain games. And he's now coming out saying that, you know, that's not what the Premier League was about. But you have to adjust to it. You have to adapt to it. This is what it is.
Well, he actually said, you know, all of us abroad watching English teams in Europe, We used to see it all the time. And now it's turned up in the Premier League. Well, I got news for him. It's been in the Premier League in English football for a long while. And the dark arts are part of the game. And we should be using them, Rick.
Yeah, I just honestly,
100%.
It baffles me that a manager would come out publicly and say he's not a fan of it. Well, use it to your advantage. Do this on other teams. I don't understand why we've kind of taken it as though we can't use that tactic. Why is it such a difficulty to use it? Look, in terms of, like I say, Spurs do get a goal back, and it was a lovely goal, to be fair. Lovely ball in by Porro, set piece, Bentancur from a header. And look, I think all of us would agree here that when you're looking at performances in terms of that game, I think for me, Bentancur was the absolute, in my opinion, best player on the display for Spurs. The saddest thing is about it, whatever you think about the ban, rightly or wrongly, Spurs are going to lose Bentancur for a period. We keep being asked the question, when is that going to happen? We're not sure. We're expecting that decision to be imminent. But like I said, we're waiting on that news in relation to how many games Bentancur will miss from a Premier League perspective. We know it's going to at least potentially be 5. It could be more depending on how the FA choose to take that decision. So we'll obviously bring that to you as soon as we know more. Timo Werner, I think, guys, again, for those that missed the game, he went on a run, put one over the crossbar. I mean, Jonny was there. He witnessed it and saw it. I feel like that'll be a broken record. We take Jonny through that again. But substitution-wise, Madison and Basuma replaced Johnson and Bentancur. Madison offered very little in that last 10 minutes. We've already done that extension on Madison, to be fair. And there was 8 minutes of added time when there's a chance for Solanke. Muric saved with his legs. So can I be honest with you guys? I mean, I don't think any of us really, truly felt if you were in that stadium as Jonny was, we were going to get back into that game. So look, to kind of summarise and close on this one, Jonny, you were there at full time. Give us the mood in that stadium at full time and what you left that stadium feeling now going into an international break, where if I can just quickly read this as we look to close this show, our international breaks where we're featured, right? These are the last 8 results, right? The last 8 results, which someone would say this, in the words of Anthony Costa, and I love you dearly and bless your heart, even when you call me after defeat, I always take your call because I love you, my man, and we're really, really good friends. Even I'm starting to think now, like Ant, this bloody club is cursed. Because when you look at the results Spurs have had after international breaks, right, or before international breaks, these are the last 8. Spurs 1, Ipswich 2. Brighton 3, Spurs 2. Newcastle 2, Spurs 1. Fulham 3, Spurs 0. Wolves 2, Spurs 1. Before that, Luton 0, Spurs 1. Burnley 2, Spurs 5. Finally, Southampton 3, Spurs 3. The famous Conte ran. I don't think we're there just yet, Jonny, but very quickly, international breaks, the feeling on that stadium coming towards the end. And overall, Jonny, where are we in your mind going into this dreaded 2-week period?
I feel like I'm part of a self-harm club. I keep going to these games, and I was at Coventry and I had to drive back for hours. I watched 87 minutes of horrific football. I was at Brighton when everyone was celebrating at half time. I said, "Calm down, this is Spurs. Anything could happen," and then it did. And then I was at Palace, and I went through it all again today. I got to be honest with you, Ricky. I felt a bit numb when I left because I've seen it all before. It's like eat, sleep, repeat. And I think something's got to change. And I agree with so many of the comments that Russ and TJ have said this evening, and yourself, that there are many things that have to change. Use the dark arts. Change your demeanor. Change your tactics. Embrace the fact that you may have got it wrong. Otherwise, it's going to end in tears. And today, I saw a lot of booing, a lot of discontent.
Is he losing, Jonny? Is he losing the home faithful in your opinion? Because it was having his name sung 2 games ago. Villa, City. What are you paying for that? You're a match-going fan. I know many that listen and view this pod are match-going supporters. What's your view?
I think it's a bit like the American election. The pollsters were saying, it's definitely Harris, and then Trump won by a landslide. And I think, I think the fan base is that split. I think, maybe a lot of the fans that don't go to the stadium are very much Ange out, a lot of them. Especially if you go on Twitter now. I haven't had a chance to look so much since I've been back. But thankfully. And the home supporters do try to support Ange. They have tried, and they are trying, and they want us to win. But you've got to give them, as you mentioned before, you have to give them something. And if you don't, and you give an abject performance like you did today, you're going to get that. And I've got to be honest, Ange, I know you're not watching, but you cannot walk off. You have to face the music, come face the fans, applaud the fans. I didn't really see him at Crystal Palace when we lost either. He was lurking in the background, I don't expect that. Top managers face the music and, and please give us a decent answer in a press conference when it goes wrong.
Jonny, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show tonight. Honestly, I mean that, mate. I know for your sins, unfortunately for you, you've got more of this to come. Whether I hear from you after this is debatable. Your wife, bless her heart.
I mean, telling my wife though, it was like it's like a pork sausage at a bar mitzvah. It didn't go down well. It really didn't.
You're a diamond, John. I can't thank you enough. Russ, we're going to come to you, my co-pilot, captain frustration for this one. Although we have got 2 weeks to refresh ourselves, and poor Russ is back for the Man City game afterwards. And I won't say poor Russ again gave me his diary until January. What is this man doing? What is he thinking of?
I think the shows that are coming up could be quite similar. Some of them. Where it's going.
Russ might be on the golf course for a couple of months after this one.
Yeah,
Russ,
not after today.
You mentioned this point, Russ, that things will not get any easier when the players do return for international duty. Our next games to come, as you mentioned, Man City before they face Fulham, Bournemouth and Chelsea. They had a great opportunity to build momentum on Sunday, but they failed to take it. I feel like I'm asking the same question on the show for the last 8-9 years. Russ, how important in these next 2 weeks is reflection to come back where, quite frankly, we need a reaction now? And will he get that reaction? Because this is the key, isn't it? We seem to be okay when it comes to doing it against the likes of the Cities, the Villas. But when it comes to these sides, we no disrespect, the Palaces, the Ipswiches, the Brightons, we really struggle to raise our game. Can he get it right, Russ, when we come back from this international break? I feel like
he said after... I know, but he said after the game today, because I did watch his entire press conference, he said, I'm only 4 of them are staying behind. The rest are off now on international duty. So I've not got a lot of time to spend with them for 10 days. That's exactly what he said, basically. So it would have to be quick tactics, any tweaks and what have you. But I think it's a huge game for him at Manchester City. You can argue that, the Fulham game is very important as well. They're in good form at the moment. We've got to go to Bournemouth. It's going to be a very testing time. But the only thing I would say is for all the Ange out brigade, when you get underneath your duck-down duvet tonight and put your lovely, beautiful face and head on the pillow and think about the game and the last word on Spurs and how annoyed you are with Ange and Daniel Levy, I've got one thing to say to you. Just before you close your eyes, Gareth Southgate's free. Sweet dreams.
On that note, Russ, I think I might have to go for one of your walks.
Yes.
And then false one, just staying on, just in circles, I think. I mean, that's the problem with us. This club have been on Russ's walks for about 25 years. We've been in circles. That's the problem with this bloody football club. Russ, I can't thank you enough. And I have to apologise for you.
Thanks for having me on.
There's more to come. TJ, we have to close with TJ. Look, he's a man that many turn to at the point of a crisis and say, help us. We need Ramini. We need Ramini to drag us through this. This show is often labelled as therapy. It's often labelled as bringing the therapist onto this show. But you know what, TJ? Only Spurs can manage to head in to the international break in mid-table in our 10th place when a win at home against a team in the bottom 3 would have put them into 3rd. And the problem is that it does feel with Tottenham that if you're playing an opponent that isn't in and around the top 4, the top 5, the top 3, Tottenham will really kick that door shut to any opportunity to grasp it and take it into their control. And like I say, we make that point in terms of the table, and this is really important. If Tottenham win in this game, they go up to 3rd. They're currently 10th. You made this point, TJ, on your opening. It's really important that we close it on this show. it's not a crisis yet. It isn't a crisis. You know, Spurs, a couple of wins, they're right back up there. But the biggest thing of all that fans will be tuning and watching, TJ, can this Tottenham side find the consistency under Ange for you? Close us on this show.
Yeah, I think so. Positives, right? And again, I think that as a fan base, certainly the viewers and listeners of this show, that they're pretty clued up. You know, of course, there's going to be some emotional reactions to things. I completely understand that. It's going to be emotional reactions to the game, emotional reactions to the things that we say, our opinions. Again, we can't please all of the people all of the time. However, just to reiterate what I said before, right? This whole idea that well, it's not an idea, it's a reality. That there are 3 points between 11th and 3rd in the Premier League right now. So I would argue that no team other than Liverpool have found consistency yet this season. So listen, all is not lost, Tottenham fans. Let's not kind of just think, woe is me, we're done for, and try to be too reactionary. We're still, bizarrely, 3 points. 3 points off 3rd. So let's not think too much about the table right now. I think what we should and are justified to feel concerned about is the manner of certain losses. Losses are going to occur whether we play well or whether we don't play well. But again, capitulation, throwing something away, not turning up, not showing desire, not being a professional who's being paid to play football. These are concerns that we are rightfully allowed to have and be upset about. So it's still right there for us. If we can get like 2 or 3, 4 wins on the bounce, we'll be right back up there again, especially because other teams are going to wobble. So to offer that therapy, to offer that cuddle to anyone who's kind of looking for it and maybe looking for somebody like me who is a bit more of a kind of a positive type of person, we're still 3 points off 3rd. I don't know how. Of course, if we'd beaten Palace and beaten Ipswich, we'd be 1 point behind City going to them when they're facing a bit of a wobble. That hasn't happened. But let's look forward. Let's try to find the positives. If we can't find the positives in our team, let's find it in our friends and our families and bring all that positive energy into the City game. Lovely to see you, Rick. Thank you for having me on as ever. Russ, you're a gentleman and a scholar, my friend. Always a pleasure to share the screen with you. And to you, Jonny, our first time together, I enjoyed it immensely, my friend. Thank you for the laughs. Thank you for the wisdom. I look forward to doing it again with you sometime.
Ditto.
Bless you. Guys, can't thank you enough. Like I said, nearly over 7,000 of you have watched this show live. Look, I want to say again, I know it's impossible to, as TJ says, please everybody all the time, but hopefully some of the comments that we've brought to you that, you know, will hopefully resonate. And at the end of the day, like TJ said to open up, we are all Spurs fans. We all feel this pain in many different ways. I know that some spend ridiculous amounts of money following this club up and down the country, Jonny being one of them here. And like I say, the amount of time that's invested into this club, we all want to see this club be successful. There's all different ways you can do that. All we ask for is a team that tries. All we ask for is a manager that makes the right decisions at the right time. He can't always get it right, but all we ask for is somebody that is there, that makes those calls at the right time. It's a big couple of weeks now for Ange Postecoglou to reflect, like the previous couple of international breaks, and try and find a way in which he can get this side to be more consistent. Otherwise, it does feel that it's not about us. You know, again, you look at Daniel Levy and his cycle sacking managers, whether you're in Ange, whether you love Ange, whether you don't like Ange, at the end of the day, Daniel Levy's record when managers are under pressure at this stage of a season in the position they're in don't tend to last for long. Let's see if Tottenham will change that narrative. Let's see if Spurs will give the manager more backing. But again, we appreciate on a show like this, we can't please everybody. And there'll be some for the manager. There'll be some that won't be for the manager. But look, at the end of the day, we are all Spurs. I want to say a massive thank you to broadcaster Russ Wiliams, to actor TJ Ramini, and the superb Jonny H, who will be looking forward to seeing more on your show. Guys, we have been the last one on Spurs. We urge you to keep safe, keep well. And as always,